Few people experience love and loss the way London does. Love of a Lifetime is a Walk to Remember by Nicholas Sparks. I never had anyone close to me die before, at least not anyone I could remember. My grandmother had died when I was 3, and I don't remember a single thing about her. Or the services that had followed, or even the few years after her passing. No one in my family or my circle of friends had ever had to experience anything like this. Jamie was 17, a child, on the verge of womanhood. She was dying, and still very much alive at the same time. I was afraid, more afraid than I'd ever been in my life, not only for her, but for me as well. I live in fear of doing something wrong or doing something that would offend her. On Monday, she didn't show up for school, and somehow I knew she'd never walk those halls again. I'd never see her read her Bible off by herself at lunch. I'd never see her moving through the crowd as she made her way to her next class. She was finished with school, forever. She would never receive her diploma. I couldn't concentrate on anything while I sat in class that first day back, listening as teacher after teacher told us what most of us had already heard. The responses were similar to those in church on Sunday. Girls cried, boys hung their heads. People told stories about her as if she was already gone. What can we do, they asked. What could we do? They asked me for answers. I don't know, was all I could say. I left school early and went to Jamie's, blowing off my classes after lunch. When I knocked at the door, Jamie answered it the way she always did, cheerfully and without a care in the world. "Hello," she said. It's nice. This is a surprise." The whole thing made me want to cry. "My father isn't home right now, but if you'd like, we could sit on the porch." "How can you do this?" I asked suddenly. "How can you pretend that nothing is wrong?" "I'm not pretending that nothing is wrong. Let me get my coat and we'll talk outside." She smiled and waited for an answer. I finally nodded, my lips pressed together. She reached out and patted my arm. "I'll be right back," she said. I walked to the chair and sat down. Jamie emerged a moment later. She wore a heavy coat and gloves and a hat to keep her warm. Still, it was too much for her. "You weren't at school today," I said. She looked down and nodded. "I know. Are you ever coming back to school?" Even though I already knew the answer, I wanted to hear it from her. "No," she said softly. "I'm not." "Why? Are you that sick already?" I started to tear up as she reached out and took my hand. "No, today I felt pretty good. It's just I wanted to be around my father in the mornings before he had to go to the office. I want to spend as much time with him as I can before I die." I felt nauseated. I couldn't respond. I'd been coming by every day. Time seemed to be slowing down and speeding up at the exact same time. "Can I get anything for you?" "No, thank you. I'm doing fine." I looked around the room and then back at her. "I've been reading the Bible," I finally said. "You have?" Her face lit up, reminding me of the angel I'd seen in the play. "I read the book of Job last night," I said, "where God stuck it to Job and to test his faith." She smiled and reached out to pat my arm. Her hand felt soft on my skin. It felt nice. "You should read something else that's about God and his betterment moments." "Why would he have done that to him?" "I don't know," she said. "Do you ever feel like Job?" She smiled with a twinkle in her eye. "Sometimes. But you haven't lost your faith." "No, I hadn't." I knew she hadn't. But I think I was losing mine. "Is it because you think you might get better?" "No," she said. "It's because it's the only thing I have left." After that, we started reading the Bible together, and it somehow seemed like the right thing to do. One Friday night, I brought her over for dinner at my house. My mom joined us for the main course, then left the table and sat in the den so that we could be alone. It was nice sitting there with Jamie, and I knew she felt the same way. She hadn't been leaving her house very much, and this was a good change for her. Since she told me about her illness, Jamie started wearing her hair down, and it was as stunning as it had been the first time I'd seen it. She was looking at the china cabinet when I reached across the table and took her hand. Thank you for coming tonight, I said. She turned her attention back to me. Thanks for inviting me. I paused. How's your father holding up? Jamie sighed. Not too well. I worry about him a lot. He loves you dearly, you know. I know. And so do I said. And when I did, she turned away. Hearing this seemed to frighten her. Will you keep coming over to my house, she asked. I squeezed her hand. Not hard, but enough to let her know I meant what I said. As long as you want me to come, I'll be there. We don't have to read the Bible anymore if you don't want to. Yes, I said softly. I think we do. She smiled. You're a good friend. I don't know what I'd do without you. She squeezed my hand. Returning the favor, sitting across from me, she looked radiant. I love you, Jamie, I said again. But this time she wasn't frightened. Instead, our eyes met across the table, and I watched as hers began to shine. She sighed and looked away, running her hand through her hair, then turned to me. I kissed her hand, smiling in return. I love you too, she finally whispered. They were the words I'd been praying to hear. A Walk to Remember by Nicholas Sparks.